Everyone knows that there is subsidy. Otherwise, we'll have been buying fuels at 200 naira per liter, and now we are buying at 145. And there has been subsidy since from the time we can recall in our generation, I think, up to 2012.
From the time of General Olusegun Obasanjo, when he increased the pump price of petrol.
So actually, there has been a campaign to remove fuel subsidy in Nigeria. There was an attempt, if you recall, by President Jonathan to remove it. There were uprising and protests then, and he had to revert. We had to maintain the subsidy then. But during the President Buhari's administration, we are shocked, we are surprised. There was our thought was that was one night removal of fuel subsidy. We thought that was once and for all removal, and we thought that was a total removal. And we thought Nigerians who have suffered, the only suffering we should suffer from subsidy removal. But now the debate, the discussion is resurfacing. Now we understand that there was no total removal. And I knew since that time, once you say you are going to deregulate the petroleum downstream sector and you are pegging the price, so you are not running away from subsidy. If you want to control price, then we are not practicing deregulation. So since from the time when the NPC said we are now going to sell at a fixed price of 145, I knew that we are not running away from petrol subsidy, because at that time we are having over recovery because oil was below $40 per barrel. So what we import was much lower than what we sell at the pump price at 145 even at that time. And even though the federal government was making profit at that time, we gave them the chance. Maybe they are making profit on a rainy day when we have under recovery, meaning that landing cost is above the fuel price at the pump station regulated, then they can offset that. But we haven't seen that. There was no immediate replacement. And we have seen the consequences of such removal in almost 7 places. Number one, inflation rose from, I think, 9%. It rose to the highest in a decade of 19%,
yeah.
90, close to 20%. Unemployment rose from 10% to 3%. And if when we have aggregate demand shrinked because of inelastic demand of fuel, people have to sacrifice other demand of other product so they can afford to pay this exorbitant fuel price. That's what happened that time. So it shrinked the economy. There was no consumption. And you know, aggregate demand is a function of consumption investment. And it also shrink investment because suppliers are no longer making profit because of the cost input is high.
And then NPC decided to be the sole importer now.
I'm coming to that. Because oil is a composite and it's also a joint demand. You cannot drive your car without fuel. So everything we do, we consume. Even this TV program, without oil, we cannot do that. Or petroleum resources, we cannot do that. So it's an integral part of every human activity. Energy is essential, like you said. So it shrinks investment, it shrinks consumption, and we immediately fell into recession for the first time in more than a decade. And we suddenly became the world poverty capital of the world. And then the 6th most miserable country to live. So these are lingering issues, consequences of what happened in the past as a result of that removal.
So, the question is there still subsidy? From your explanation that the government is still saying that it's still subsidizing, and at the cost, the landing cost for petroleum product fuel, particularly according to the Minister of State for Petroleum, as at today is 180 naira per liter.
Yes.
So,
yes, there is subsidy. It's just English. NNPC said we are doing what you call now under recovery. But they don't call it subsidy. For example, the landing cost, you say 189, but we are selling it to you 145. What is it? Is it not subsidy? In a different language. So let's not deceive ourselves. What we are paying from the coffers of government, we are bringing fetching money. Now, excess crude account.
Are you saying that Nigerians are not paying enough for petroleum products?
According to the market. When you are going
when
for
the market, when the market is low, when the price of the crude oil on the oil spot market is low when it was down, should we still be paying more? At that time, we paid more. The price. Why should it be so?
You should ask Kachuku that question, because at that time the landing cost was around 100 at that time.
Kachuku is in charge of NNPC.
Well, he's the Minister of Petroleum.
Well, the president is even the Minister of Petroleum. Kachuku is just his assistant.
You have to bring the president here to explain to you. At that time, there was what you call over-recovery. There were a lot of profits. So that means Nigeria were extorted at that time, paying higher than they should have paid. If it was floating price...
Was that right?
This is the question you have to ask the policymakers, I say, whether it's right or not, but I'm policy
no,
analyst.
I'm sure I'm going to be asking
actually.
the...
And I think that was the consequence. The NPC became the sole importer of petroleum. The burden became so much now, according to statistics, what Kachuku said, they were paying 1 billion naira per day for subsidy. And now that was $1, when crude oil was $40. And now it has increased to $73 per barrel, the highest since 2013.
Yeah.
So then you can imagine in a year how much you're paying. You're paying almost 400 billion. You just mentioned the figures.
The IMF, you know,
so how
even
can
said
NPC afford that? That's
that
not
we're
sustainable.
paying what was spent, I think, for the first or 2 quarters or so, for the first quarter, for 743 billion naira on oil subsidy.
And in fact, we cannot verify the figures because they kept increasing the figure. There was no transparency on the consumption, because that was, we said we are consuming 30 million, it increased to 50 million, and suddenly it becomes 60 million, and then 66 million. Then how can you confirm that? Because if you increase the liter consumption beyond reasonable figures, that it reaches some pockets. So this gives room for corruption. Even PPRA refused to publish the pricing template. So we didn't know what's happening. We just agree with whatever officials tell us. That's not transparent. And that's why I think even the report from IMF says we are poorly managing our petroleum sector, especially the excess crude account. It will have been there to save us. From $20 billion, it has now eroded to less than $1 billion. And it's not there to save us. And now Nigerians are crying, we cannot afford another subsidy removal. We faced the consequences. We are still facing it. We felt it in our pocket, in our stomach.
Yeah, because
we cannot afford that.
Yeah, again. Because if that is done,
it's huge burden on someone who is supposed to be just a policymaker and to be a referee. And that is what we've seen, because NPC is now trapped. You have to pay subsidy. You have to build the infrastructure. And this brings me to the conditions. I think to me, I came up with 5 conditions. Number 1, refining capacity. We have to have that efficient. I came up with the proposal.
Should the government still be maintaining the refineries?
No, no, that's why I said to do that, now we have to come what we call domestic market obligation or domestic responsibility on IOCs, International Oil Companies, Chevron, Texaco, Shell. They have bigger refineries out there. They didn't care about Nigerians. They didn't care if we are dying from hunger or starvation. What they want is our resources. That's why they created LNG. They compressed their natural gas and sent it abroad. No international
because you have not created that infrastructural
so
facilities
now we have
to be able to even consume part of it.
What we are going to do, Total and the rest, we have to compel them to come up with a joint project. If a single person can do this in Nigeria, you have to do it. Otherwise, leave this country. All of them come together,
but that would
create
be dictatorial.
But it's our resources, and that's one of the commercial risks. And they know that. When you come into a country, you have to face commercial risks. The bargaining power changes after you put all your installations. You cannot leave midway, otherwise you make a huge loss.
Okay, give the third.
Number two is the transport sector. Why must why must everyone look out there, see cars everywhere? Everyone must own a car. Even if we sleep in the same estate and we are coming here at work, we always come on different cars. 5 of us working in the same place, and we are coming to the same place, everyone driving his own car. So that doubles the or triples the consumptions to number of people that use car every single day. So if we have a convenient public transport, mass transport system, like in the UK, where me and you, we can use those public transport systems, it will reduce the demand for oil. How much you pay for it wouldn't matter for you, because you just pay the ticket for a week, for a year. It don't cost you. And because oil is the monopoly fuel in transport sector, there has not been yet a competitor in the transport sector. And number 2, so transportation sector, it requires investment. You see, it's about money there. And then we have to target electricity. You should not undermine the fuel you put in your generator. If you put together number of Nigerians over the years, how much is it? That's a huge amount of money. The generators we buy. All this amount a lot of cost. Then inflation, we have to have at least the condition is maintain your inflation to a single digit before you remove inflation. Bring it down where you made it, which is 9%. If NLPC or the Nigerian government cannot bring down inflation rate to 9%, they should forget about
the removal of fuel subsidy.
Yeah, because the problem now, inflation now is linked to exchange rate. Because most of our importation comes from outside. Most of the things we consume, petroleum product, comes from outside. And in our import basket, the largest item is petroleum product. And can you imagine, we are the 8th largest country in terms of crude oil, or 10th, I mean. So this is so ridiculous. We have oil, we don't have refineries. Other countries don't have oil, have refineries. And there is no correlation.
Let me just quickly give Nigerians one breaking news that it's happening around the oil industry. The Nigerian Senate has thrown out a bill seeking to phase out petrol cars for electric vehicles. Are we progressing or retrogressing?
Well, I think to me, yes, electric car is a huge a competitor.
But that's where the world is going. Yeah, should we be going back?
Yeah, you know, there is a transition. Of course, in energy sector, in history, looking back from traditional energy to coal, now to the fossil fuels. So we don't have to wait for oil to finish before the next fuel takes over. And now we've seen China, one of the largest consumers of petroleum, now having structural changes in its economy from energy-intensive economy into less energy-intensive, which means more of service industry. And now with the innovation of electric car, you don't have to have the conventional fuel to drive your car. We have the gas-to-liquid fuel. With gas, you can then refine a fuel that you can use in your car. And now you can use renewables to generate electricity. And once you need, you just charge your car and you start driving. And I think this is a big call. What we need to do, instead of doing it in a draconian way to force people to stop using fuel conversion engine, fuel PMS, we call it in Nigeria, engine cars. What we need to do is to make the electric cars more, create incentive, to make it attractive so that investors will now be willing to invest in electric car. I have a proposal for electric car company here in Nigeria.
In Nigeria.
Yeah, so, and that's the future. So we don't have to wait until the next transition came and some people have already gone past.
So the National Assembly made a big mistake here, you want to say. No, our legislators who are supposed to be making laws to help stimulate, you know, the economy.
Yeah, exactly. The electric car is a long-term plan, a roadmap, the process, the steps to take to remove fuel subsidy, and the measures, the social safety nets to be in place before you remove it. You cannot board a plane without a ticket. So you have to get the ticket first. So now you have the ticket to remove subsidy, then you go ahead and do that. And one way, because you've been mentioning some figures in the past, one thing that all this experience that shared together is that Naira, our currency, is suffering a lot. We have commodity we export, but barely we see the effect of our export on the value of our currency, because everyone that's coming to buy our crude oil is bringing us someone else's currency printed in America. And largely Americans, they come to buy our crude oil with what they printed in their own country. So why is Naira in between? We produce crude oil, we send it out there in the market, and we collect dollar. And now we use this dollar and they convert it into currency and our current local currency, and then we do all these projects. So I think we have to link somehow in between the Naira and the crude oil, so that the more export on crude oil, then the more
firmer the Naira should be.
So we have to link that, and that will also help reduce the inflation. And one of the criteria is to target inflation. You have to reduce the inflation. One way to do that is to reduce the money in circulation, and then you can then increase monetary interest rates, so people will rather put their money in banks, and in this case, we reduce the interest rate so that people buy and then invest. When you invest, you create competition, and there will be more productivity in the economy. So we reduce the number of our import bill, will reduce drastically. And then number 5, which is I didn't finish, of course, is all this previous administration you caught, and even Dr. Kalu's administration. What they did was to have a lot of saving. There were a lot of saving because we had less issues that time when we have more revenue. There was a time when Yakubu Gowon said the problem in Nigeria was not money, but how to spend the money.
But that's the problem.
That is why Obasanjo came out with the excess crude account. At that time, he left it around $20 billion. As at last December, it's eroded to less than $1 billion. And this saving will have been there for us. And this is the saving we should have used to build other infrastructure, to reinvest what we get from oil. Oil, natural resources cannot guarantee growth. And therefore, we've accidentally found ourselves in a trap. We cannot afford to go for further loans, because the more loans we take, the more the depth of the grave.
Let's hear from a petroleum economist again. Okay. Dr. Ahmed, look at the sentiment, being shared by critical stakeholders in the Nigeria's oil industry. They say IMF's advice is a poisonous one. You get the point. What's your take here?
I think our blueprints, what we do as a country, should not be dictated by IMF or any other external body. But we know what is good for us. What we said, this is not sustainable, and it's already eroding national treasury, and we cannot afford to remove fuel subsidy at the moment. So we will not...
eroding. You just said it's eroding national treasury.
Yes.
So why are you still holding
my personal, because that's their personal opinion.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is we should remove subsidy
this
when
should
we
be
are
a considered opinion.
So just like I told you, we agree that we need to board the plane. But do you have the ticket? So we have to find the ticket. That means we have to have those conditions. We just set out 5 conditions for us to be qualified to remove subsidy. But whether IMF agrees with it or not. But I have 3, my final advice.
As the minister, if you become the Minister of Petroleum Resources from May 29th.
And myself as an expert.
Yes, because
as an expert.
The president advised the president for his second and last term,
yes,
how we can get out of these woods.
Number one, we have to look for unconventional source of revenue. So we have to think outside the box, because these things are all about funding. It's about investment, building real sector, infrastructure, and removing the subsidy and maintaining it until when we are ready. It requires huge amount of money.
In all of this, you're leaving the informal sector that really drives any country's economy.
We have to have a private sector driven economy. And like you said, the government should be a policy maker, should be a referee to make sure everyone is playing according to the rule. But now government is just becoming a mass with a lot of responsibility. Yeah. You are doing everything yourself. You are a policy maker. Come on, these refineries, privatize it. It's not a bad idea to bring a lot of private investment across, so that government will just have to keep watching. And for me, I think before you remove fuel subsidy, there are other options. We can maintain subsidy in a different format. Number one, we can look at quota subsidy, or we can look at targeted subsidy. Quota subsidy is where we look at the average daily consumption of individuals. For example, myself, my car may be 80 liters, 75 liters, and you give me first 75 liters in the month to be subsidized. So I have to go enroll, register myself with biometrics, so that I can benefit from that first 75 liter consumption subsidy. So now we are targeting how much we pay every single month in form of subsidy. We should not go beyond that, so that we can maintain the infrastructural development that we want to do before we finally remove the entire fuel subsidy. So which means commercial vehicles, which takes a lot of people, instead of having 75, maybe we give them 500 liters. This will drastically address the inflation effect. And we have to look at the monetary policy, and we have to also look at, we need more injections within the economy. We don't want so much withdrawals. If government spending and giving more benefit, like the fuel subsidy, is enriching the economy is growing, because it's now like healing economy now. So we are just coming out from a recession. So targeted subsidy is where you target the population segment of the people. So this will also entails knowing who is poor, who is average, and who to subsidize. Because, for example, people like you, even if you're not giving subsidy, you can fill your car tank with 300 naira per liter, so you don't actually deserve to be paying subsidy. But there are people down there in rural areas where if you increase it even by a naira, they will feel it. And we just have to look at...
Everybody will feel it.
And we have to look at the transport sector.
Okay.
And this railway is very key, it's very important.
So you're advising Mr. President that is one key project, must accelerate and complete.
Yes,
no, we don't have much